Naomi. I'm 21 years old and I would identify as queer. So I grew up in a Christian household. My dad is a vicar in the Church of England and my parents always have been religious. It was something that we were brought up around, and we always went to church. I considered the wider church as my family, but growing up in that environment, you do hear messages against LGBT people. I didn't have really extreme kind of, this is completely wrong, this is abhorrent, this is unnatural or anything like that, but there is always this kind of underlying tone of that's just not what we do, that's not who we are. And sometimes even the idea that there is a choice involved. And so I spent a lot of my teenage years kind of ignoring the fact that I was attracted to girls. It was kind of something that I decided that I didn't need to focus on, that it didn't need to be a part of me. And I did fairly well at it for a while. But then when I went to university, I met someone and fell in love, and suddenly it was like, this is something that I can't ignore anymore. This is me and this is part of my life. And even if it means that I'm not who I was trying to be or who I thought I was, then it's something that I need to deal with. And lots of other people think that it would ruin my faith, or it would mean that I want to walk away and never talk to anyone from the church again. I know that that is the case for some people, but I didn't want to lose that part of myself. And actually, in accepting that I was who I was and I love who I love, I feel like my faith actually came alive, and I was being completely honest with myself for the first time. And I felt like I actually saw myself how God sees me for the first time in my life. I wasn't putting up any false pretenses. I wasn't trying to be someone that I'm not. I wasn't trying to be perfect. And actually that was completely refreshing, and it meant that my faith was so much stronger, and it made me realise that there's probably a lot of things that I've taken for granted and just taken at face value that I needed to go back and think about. But I actually felt so close to God throughout the whole thing because I was just being myself. You know, before that, Christianity was kind of something that, just another thing that I wanted to be good at. Like I've always been an overachiever, and that was kind of what I wanted to be in terms of my faith as well. And I loved being given responsibility for things and being asked to take on leadership positions. And in coming out, I had a lot of those responsibilities taken away from me because people see it as a conflict of interests. In that, I realised that I had to learn to love myself and love God without all the shiny added extras. It's about being who I am and having that relationship with God without having to have all this other stuff. And that was actually a really powerful experience for me, and it has completely transformed the way I see myself, the way I see other Christians, my relationship with the church, and it's definitely been for the better, even though some of it has been really hard. So one of the less kind of positive experiences that I had after coming out was that you don't have to just come out to your parents and the people that you know when you're a Christian, you come out to your church as well. And this meant I had to basically approach 2 organisations that I worked for at the time and tell them that I was gay and that I was in a relationship with another woman. And that meant that I had to be excluded from those leadership positions. And that was really frustrating because I knew that I was good enough to do the jobs, and I knew that I was, still really passionate about doing that work, but I was being, sent away and excluded for something that I had no control over and that I didn't think impacted my ability to lead. And that was really, really difficult. And it felt like before, and all my relationships with those people and the people that I'd met through working for those organisations was all based on an image of me that was perfect and shiny, and it was something that was palatable for them. But as soon as I was completely honest about who I was, it was like this fundamental flaw in my personality, and so I should no longer be associated with them. And that was really, really hard, but it has meant that I've learned to have a relationship with God that's about me and about who I am. I still have a lot to process in terms of, feeling betrayed by those people, because one of the organisations I've been a part of since I was 9 years old, and those people I've seen year after year. It was a summer camp, and some of those people were my best friends, and it wasn't their decision, it was the overall organisation's decision, but I can't pretend that those relationships haven't suffered as a result, and it still feels really hard, and it's still something that, I have to kind of process as time goes on, because it is really difficult. I think now when I am dealing with churches and organisations that aren't affirming. Although my initial reaction, because I'm so passionate about this, is to be angry. That's not where I want to stay. I think if we get into the habit of saying that there are good and bad people, and say, there are good LGBT affirming people and then there are bad bigoted people, we're actually playing them at their own game. Like, that's what they try and do to us. They try and exclude us as being bad and unredeemable because of this characteristic we don't have any control over. And I think, I've been part of those churches. I know those people. Those people are my family in some cases. And I just think that kind of theology, it's not just negative towards LGBT people. It puts you in this frame of mind where, like, there is a fine line that you have to walk and you can fall off so easily either way. And I think all of these feed into the same idea that there's a group of people who want to have control and want to have a say and want to have power over people. I think even progressive Christians need to move away from the idea that it's, their table and their circle and they're making it bigger for us because they're nice, sort of thing. Although it's well intentioned, I think we need to move away from the idea that LGBT people are naturally on the outside. And this is something that I've come to realise myself, is that we shouldn't be making excuses for ourselves and having to apologise for taking up space and for having a presence and for having voices and for having skills. It's about us, having something to offer. And I believe that church and the wider society are actually worse off without us. It's not about, they have to make space for us. I believe that there's actually a detrimental effect to society and to the church and to any other kind of organisation of people if LGBT people aren't involved, if women aren't giving full responsibility and leadership roles, if Black people are excluded. We're limiting our potential to be fully human and fully alive and fully functional. But I think, we have to take ownership of that for ourselves and believe in ourselves and say, we have something to offer, and actually you're missing out if you don't let us into this thing, if you don't widen the circle, because it's not actually your circle to widen. We should be part of this and we should be given responsibility and voices and platforms because we have something to say. And I think especially within the church, we're supposed to be, Christianity is supposed to be the religion of oppressed people, and it's supposed to be liberating and it's supposed to be reconciling. We're not giving the voice to the people who've had experiences of being oppressed and who need liberating. And so, I think it's difficult because I'm really passionate about social justice and I really want to get involved in fighting some of the battles that we're facing in this country and elsewhere. But in Christian circles, I'm always just going to be known for being the gay one. And so if that's the battle I have to fight, that's the battle I have to fight, and I'm up for that, and that's fine. But I think it's a shame that the church are losing out on our skills and our abilities because they can't see past these ideas of who we're supposed to be in their heads. As I said, I think, it's not about them being good people or bad people. It's about there's a heck of a lot more grey than we think there is, and things aren't necessarily black and white like that. I don't want to get into the habit of categorising people as good or bad or wrong or right. And I think that's where the conversation goes astray, because we end up doing the exact same thing as has been done to us, and saying, well, you're wrong and you're terrible for being wrong and these are the repercussions of you being wrong. And it's not that those things aren't true, and it's not that LGBT people haven't suffered at the hands of the church, because of course they have. But that doesn't mean that I don't want to see reconciliation, and I don't want to see hope for the church coming together and for people to learn and for people to grow, because people are on a journey. And even people who are really, really close to me, members of my family who reacted badly when I came out, I want to see them come further and come along that journey, and they have. And if I had completely just written them off as bad as soon as that happened and cut them off, then they probably wouldn't be on that journey. And that's why I'm still in the church, and that's why I'm still fighting this battle, because it would have been so easy to walk away, and it could have saved me a lot of heartache if I did, but actually I would just end up denying part of myself again, and that's not where I want to be. One of the things I'm asked a lot, both by Christians, by LGBT people, is how can you be LGBT and Christian? And I think it's a very valid question, because we're given the idea that there are two completely separate, differing ideals. For me, I'm just at the point where people don't have ownership of God. People don't have ownership of who can be a Christian and who can't. And I have a faith and I have a belief, and I'm LGBT. It proves the point that you can be. It's not as easy as there is one or the other. And again, it's this idea that people want things to be black and white. I think sometimes people almost want there to be a fight. I think people have this idea that the church is this ancient, dying organisation that's bigoted and doesn't want, anyone to have any fun or anything like that. But I am the church. I am part of the church. I am a Christian and I believe these things, and I'm not alone, and there's so many of us. I think just like LGBT people have been given a bad reputation and there are stereotypes associated with what it means to be LGBT, the same does occur for Christians. And I mean, there are billions of us. We're all different. We all have different experiences. And a lot of us are gay. And that's something that's ignored. And it's kind of conveniently ignored to make an enemy out of the church. And I completely understand why. And there has been so much pain caused by the church on so many different groups of people. But at the same time, even though the church has caused me hurt, I am still part of the church. I am the church. I believe that I, as a Christian, I am part of the overall body of the church. And so when people say, can you be LGBT and Christian? I'm like, yes, because I am. And they are not necessarily opposing ideals. And some people as Christians use their faith against LGBT people. But for me, the two fit together and have worked together so well and have taught me so much about God and so much about what it means to love other people and to not be judgmental and to just see things from a different perspective, that not only do I think it's possible to be LGBT and Christian, I think it's a brilliant, brilliant gift to have. And I think that we have a responsibility to transform, the church, transform society, to see LGBT people in a positive light. And I think we're doing that, and we're doing it really well. And it's a really exciting time to be part of these two different communities. I think what I would have wanted to know growing up LGBT is that there's not one way to do it. And that's something that I've seen in, becoming part of the LGBT community, meeting other LGBT Christians and just non-religious LGBT people as well, is that the stereotypes only show you a really small fraction of what it means to be part of this community. There's the full kind of breadth and depth and colour of humanity within this group of people. The only thing we have in common is that we're not straight or cisgendered. And other than that, everyone is represented, everyone is here. And we have stereotypes of what it means to be each of the different letters and each of the different identities. But actually, there is no one way. And there's no one way to have a gay family. And there's no one way to have a gay lifestyle, as people like to say. There's such a diversity in the people that you encounter who identify as any of those things. And that's a really, really beautiful thing. And it's something that's not shown enough. But I think in the next generation that's coming through, you're going to have so much choice and so much opportunity to choose your own path. If you don't want labels, you don't have to have them. If you want them, you can make them your own. And that's so exciting. And people are becoming less and less keen to be put into boxes. And I think that's a really, really exciting thing to be part of. I think we're going through a really transformative time. And I think we're slowly getting more and more freedom and more we're finding more and more joy in expressing ourselves like this. We don't have to feel the weight of shame anymore. And there are still repercussions of the way that, LGBT people have been treated in the past. But I think we're slowly, step by step, moving beyond that, and we're coming into our own. And that's a really, really exciting thing. So I decided to come out and tell my parents when I realised that I'd fallen in love with the person who I'm now with. And yeah, I had absolutely no idea what to expect. My parents are both Christian, and they've both had some conservative theology in the past. And so I had absolutely no idea how it was going to go. And honestly, I was actually really surprised, and they were great. They're definitely on a journey, and there's still things that they need to figure out and they're not entirely sure of. But the one thing that they were sure of is that they love me and that they wanted me to be happy, and they wanted me to be honest and be able to be completely myself. And I mean, even my other half had a completely different experience. So I think, yeah, if parents can just put their fear aside, and it is fear, it's not actually hate, I think it is definitely fear, and just say, I love you and it's going to be okay and I'm here for you. And that just, it makes a world of difference. And it makes me really sad that some people don't get that. But I also think we need to leave room to be surprised by people and to be, surprised by what love can do in people. And I certainly was, and my relationship with my parents is even better now because, again, I'm being honest about who I am, and I feel like they think they know me better, which is a really, really great thing. But it's kind of this idea that you should come out to people as soon as humanly possible, because otherwise you're kind of almost like you're lying and you're not being true to yourself. And it's really important to be honest with ourselves as well. But at the same time, people have to remember that their safety comes first and their happiness comes first. And as long as you're working on yourself and you're becoming, happy with yourself and accepting yourself and who you are, you don't owe it to anyone. And it's really important that you do what is necessary for you to live a safe and happy life. And if that means not telling your parents for a little while, that's okay. If it means that you don't want to tell your friends immediately or not until you leave school, that's okay. I think there's a difference between living in fear and not accepting yourself, and also a difference between feeling like you have to come out and feeling like there's this expectation and that you're lying to people if you're not, because that's not true. It's something that is completely your own and something that you have complete ownership of. You don't owe anyone anything. You don't have to do things in a certain order. There is no right way to do it, and it's really important that you do it in a way that feels natural and comfortable to you.